Rachel Zegler, is sitting in an empty movie theater watching her movie, giggling hysterically and maniacally.
Rachel Zegler, the actress cast to lead Disney's ambitious live-action remake of Snow White, found herself at the center of ridicule after uploading a video of herself watching the film in what appeared to be a completely empty movie theater. In the clip, she sat smiling, clapping, and even holding a bouquet of flowers as if attending a triumphant premiere. However, the visual contrast between her enthusiastic performance and the sea of empty chairs surrounding her told a different story. Viewers online quickly pointed out the irony, celebrating success while visibly surrounded by failure. There were no fans cheering, there were no crowds buzzing with excitement. Just a few friends sitting beside her and a hollow room echoing with silence. Rather than evoking inspiration or admiration, the video became a meme.
Look at this. Look at this face. What can be said about this level of narcissism here?
Another log on the fire of criticism that had already been burning for months. It was a moment that, for many, symbolized the detachment of modern celebrity culture. Zegler appeared to be in denial about the film's reception, choosing to celebrate a fantasy while the reality outside the theater was growing increasingly hostile. The moment crystallized public perception, a tone-deaf display of self-congratulation amid the ruins of what was supposed to be Disney's next big hit. The financials behind Disney's live-action Snow White remake are staggering. Early estimates placed the film's budget at over $250 million, but updated internal sources suggest it may have ballooned closer to $300 million, after accounting for reshoots, marketing, and international promotional efforts. Despite the massive investment, the film's opening weekend brought in a mere $43 million, a performance that fell drastically short of projections. Previews alone earned just $3.5 million, far below expectations for a major Disney release. For comparison, The Little Mermaid, which faced its own share of controversy, opened with nearly double the revenue. Even Dumbo, previously considered a flop, outperformed Snow White relative to its cost.
The cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story.
The box office disaster not only embarrassed Disney but also shook confidence in the studio's creative direction. It wasn't just a financial loss, it was a reputational one. The numbers revealed the disconnect between the studio's confidence and the audience's disinterest. Despite the studio's history of profitable remakes, this particular venture showcased the limits of nostalgia-driven storytelling when paired with polarizing creative decisions. As the box office numbers continued to stagnate, Disney quietly scaled back its promotional efforts, pulled premieres, and distanced itself from the project's lead actress, all while scrambling behind the scenes to salvage what it could of the situation. Long before the film hit theaters, its star had already alienated a large portion of Disney's fanbase. In a series of interviews, Rachel Zegler repeatedly criticized the 1937 animated classic that inspired the remake. She called the original story dated, labeled the prince as a stalker, and dismissed the romantic plot as irrelevant to modern audiences.
You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it, you didn't direct it, you have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White.
Right.
You should shut up and do the job.
While reinterpreting classic stories is not a new concept, the manner in which Zegler conveyed her opinions came across to many as dismissive and disrespectful. Her tone, described by critics as condescending, did not merely update the tale, but appeared to undermine the original's values and charm. Fans who had grown up loving the animated Snow White interpreted her words as an attack on their childhood memories. The timing made things worse. Zegler's remarks came during a time when audiences were increasingly critical of perceived political overreach in entertainment. Rather than marketing the remake as a love letter to the original, Zegler's comments framed it as a rejection of everything the classic stood for. Instead of promoting excitement, her interviews fueled outrage, with hashtags, memes, and video essays flooding social media.
These people, and this is the difference between a business owner or someone who does very well for themselves in the private sector to become wealthy. This person was born looking a certain way and has a God-given ability to lie.
What could have been an opportunity to unify generations under a modern adaptation became a cultural wedge, one that Zegler, intentionally or not, helped drive deeper. The footage of Zegler in the empty theater didn't simply generate laughter. It triggered a wave of commentary accusing her of narcissism, delusion, and complete disconnection from reality. The combination of her past remarks, her self-congratulatory demeanor, and the empty seats surrounding her led many to believe that she had lost touch with both the film's audience and the actual performance of the movie. Commentators online began labeling her behavior as emblematic of the modern celebrity crisis, a world where influencers and actors continue to celebrate themselves regardless of public reception or critical response. Social media became saturated with posts ridiculing her statements, screenshots of vacant theaters across the country, and sarcastic suggestions to start a GoFundMe for Disney due to the financial losses. The actress's attempts to defend the film only intensified the backlash. What many perceived was not simply a poorly performing movie, but a figurehead who seemed unable or unwilling to acknowledge reality.
And that's apart from all of the political controversy started by the actress. So the movie had all kinds of problems creatively and conceptually.
As the memes and mockery piled up, it became clear that Zegler's public persona was no longer a quirky newcomer to Hollywood, but a cautionary tale of how quickly public sentiment can shift from admiration to disdain in the age of viral culture. While the public saw a star in denial, behind closed doors, Disney executives were in a state of full-blown crisis. Under the leadership of Bob Iger, the company was already reeling from a series of underperforming projects, and Snow White had been positioned as a centerpiece of the studio's live-action slate. The backlash surrounding Zegler was not just embarrassing, it was threatening the viability of the project itself. Emergency meetings were reportedly held as marketing plans were rewritten, premieres were canceled, and contingency plans for damage control were scrambled together. Iger and his team were forced to weigh the cost of continuing to support a project that was rapidly becoming toxic against the damage it would do to Disney's already fragile brand if they abandoned it publicly. Rumors of reshoots, last-minute edits, and internal debates about how to proceed flooded industry forums and entertainment news outlets. Some reports even suggested that Disney was exploring ways to bury Zegler's involvement in marketing materials or quietly replace her in promotional content. The situation highlighted how a single performance, or misstep, could bring an entire studio's plans crashing down.
I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White.
Right.
You should shut up and do the job.
Disney wasn't simply trying to promote a film anymore. They were trying to contain a PR wildfire that showed no signs of slowing down. Another layer to the controversy surrounding Snow White stemmed from casting decisions and what many perceived as an overcorrection in Disney's approach to inclusion. Instead of retaining the iconic Seven Dwarfs, beloved characters who have been part of the story for generations, Disney opted to replace them with a group of magical, diverse characters of varying genders, heights, and ethnicities. While Disney positioned this as a progressive step, many critics and members of the dwarfism community argued that the studio had swung the pendulum too far in the opposite direction. They felt excluded from roles that should have been theirs by default. Critics accused Disney of prioritizing optics over authenticity, resulting in a film that no longer resembled the classic tale it was based on. The backlash wasn't just from conservative commentators or traditionalists, it was widespread. Audiences across demographics voiced confusion and frustration over what felt like unnecessary changes. Rather than reimagining the story with care and creativity, it appeared to some as if Disney was checking boxes on a corporate diversity spreadsheet.
One of the most basic is the responsibility to control yourself and comport yourself a certain way publicly so that you don't harm the project and thereby harm all the hundreds of other people who are working on it.
This approach may have satisfied internal initiatives, but it failed to resonate with the broader audience who wanted the magic of Snow White to remain intact. The result was a film that felt alien to many, something that looked like Snow White on the surface but carried none of its original soul. Rachel Zegler's public unraveling didn't stop with bad reviews or internet jokes. Her career, which had shown immense promise after appearances in West Side Story and the Hunger Games prequel, took a dramatic and visible downturn. Projects began quietly removing her name. Performances were canceled. Reports surfaced that she had been replaced in major upcoming films, including Paddington 3 and other high-profile Disney initiatives. While the official reason given in some cases was scheduling conflicts or the impact of industry strikes, insiders revealed a more troubling truth. Zegler had become a liability. Studios were no longer willing to take the risk that her involvement could tank a production before it even reached theaters. In an especially shocking turn, Zegler herself reportedly began blaming fans for what she claimed was a $20 million loss in potential earnings. Instead of accepting any personal accountability for her polarizing comments or failed PR strategy, she pointed the finger outward, fueling even more resentment from the public. Her self-victimizing statements, paired with her increasingly defensive posture online, alienated not just viewers, but also potential collaborators in the industry. What began as a backlash over an unpopular film had evolved into a career crisis, one that few young actresses recover from once studios lose confidence. Disney's response to the growing firestorm was not explosive, it was surgical. Slowly, and with increasing urgency, the studio began removing Zegler from promotional events and press tours.
Our rights are on the line, folks. Our reproductive rights.
Ugh.
Come on,
Go get Cheshire Cat.
go vote blue. And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
She was absent from major premieres. She was excluded from marketing campaigns. Even when she was present, such as during a solo appearance in Tokyo, her participation felt downplayed. Co-stars were not alongside her. Public Q&As were avoided. And in some cases, media were restricted from asking her direct questions. Internally, Disney had already made the decision: distance the brand from the controversy, even if it meant rewriting the film's legacy before it had a chance to build one. Perhaps the clearest signal came when Zegler was replaced for key promotional performances during the holiday season. The studio didn't make a grand announcement. It didn't issue a press release. It simply moved forward without her. This quiet shift signaled to industry watchers and fans alike that Disney had abandoned its original vision. It was now focused on salvaging whatever it could from the ashes. From this point forward, Zegler was no longer the face of Snow White. She was its cautionary footnote. As the situation surrounding Snow White deteriorated, it became increasingly clear that this wasn't just about one film or one actress. The remake had come to symbolize a much deeper identity crisis within Disney itself. Under the leadership of Bob Iger, the company had struggled to recapture the cultural dominance it once enjoyed. Projects across Marvel, Lucasfilm, Pixar, and even Walt Disney Animation had faced diminishing returns, creative stagnation, and audience alienation. Snow White, with its massive budget, historical legacy, and volatile lead actress, was the perfect storm. A case study in how brand erosion, misaligned messaging, and PR missteps could undo years of goodwill. The film's struggles highlighted how disconnected Disney had become from its core audience. Fans didn't just dislike the movie, they openly rooted against it. Online commentary, media criticism, and even responses from former Disney insiders revealed a deep frustration with the direction the company had taken. Disney, once the gold standard in family entertainment, was now being mocked as out of touch, overly political, and creatively bankrupt. The failure of Snow White wasn't a blip. It was a billboard warning of what happens when a studio loses sight of the magic that made it special in the first place. The release of Snow White may have come and gone, but the fallout is far from over. Rachel Zegler is reportedly exploring legal options, including the possibility of suing Disney for wrongful termination or breach of contract. If true, it would represent a final and dramatic collapse in the partnership between actress and studio. But legal threats aside, the damage is already done. Zegler's reputation is tarnished, her career uncertain, and her once bright future dimmed by a storm of controversy. For Disney, the situation is equally dire. Executives are reevaluating their approach to casting, marketing, and modernizing legacy content. Internal debates continue over whether to abandon certain projects entirely or attempt soft reboots with new talent. The Snow White sequel, once greenlit with fanfare, has been quietly shelved. Promotional campaigns have ended. Test screenings have confirmed what everyone feared: audiences aren't buying it. In the background, Bob Iger is holding emergency meetings, scrambling to reorient a studio adrift in its own creative chaos. The lessons of Snow White will be studied, dissected, and hopefully learned from. But for now, what remains is the debris of a fairy tale gone wrong, a brand in distress, and a star who, for all her talent, couldn't escape the consequences of her own words. The story of Snow White was once about hope, kindness, and love. Now, it's a story about missteps, miscommunication, and the high cost of forgetting who your audience is.